There's a plan being executed right now, in plain sight, that will either be remembered as the greatest achievement in human history or the most expensive failure any single person ever attempted. And the craziest part is that most people are not even paying attention to it. Elon Musk is trying to move humanity to Mars, not visit it, not plant a flag and come home, actually move there, build cities, grow food, raise children, and create a civilization on another planet within your lifetime. That alone would be enough for one story, but here's where it gets truly strange. The more you look at everything happening around this plan, the budget wars, the canceled programs, the government reshuffling, the rocket failures, and the comebacks, the more you realize this is not just a space story. This is a power story. This is about who controls the future of human civilization and whether one man is actually in the process of seizing it. Let's start with the thing that almost nobody talks about when they discuss Elon Musk and Mars. The fundamental reason he says he is doing it. Musk is not trying to go to Mars because it sounds cool. He's not doing it for tourism or science or national pride. His actual stated reason is that he believes humanity is living on borrowed time on a single planet, and that if something catastrophic happens, an asteroid, a pandemic, a war, a slow civilizational collapse, everything we are and everything we have ever built could disappear forever. He has said, and I am not paraphrasing here, that being multiplanetary will vastly increase the probable lifespan of consciousness because we will no longer have all our eggs, literally and metabolically, on one planet. That is his justification. Not profit, not conquest, existential insurance for the human species. You can agree or disagree with that logic, but it is important to understand it before you understand what he is actually building, because the scale of what he is proposing only makes sense if you accept the premise that the stakes are truly that high. Now let us talk about the actual plan, because it is more detailed, more aggressive, and more strange than almost any mainstream coverage has captured. In May 2025, Musk gave a presentation inside SpaceX's Star Factory in Texas, a 42-minute talk to his employees that was posted online, where he laid out the most specific Mars roadmap SpaceX has ever published. The first phase is sending uncrewed Starship rockets to Mars during the 2026 launch window. This window opens in November and December 2026, when the orbital geometry between Earth and Mars creates the shortest possible transit time. These windows only come around once every 26 months. Which means missing a window means waiting more than 2 years for another shot. Musk gave himself a 50-50 chance of making that 2026 window. He acknowledged that the entire plan depends on SpaceX first mastering orbital refueling, the process of launching a tanker ship into Earth orbit and transferring fuel to the Mars-bound Starship before it begins its 7 to 9 month journey to the Red Planet. Without this, Starship cannot carry enough payload to make the mission viable. The first payloads were planned to include Tesla's Optimus humanoid robots, bipedal, autonomous machines designed to land on Mars, unload cargo, set up solar power arrays, scout terrain, and begin constructing basic infrastructure before any human being ever sets foot there. The idea is that by the time humans arrive, there will already be a functional base waiting for them, built by robots that do not need oxygen, do not need food, and cannot die of radiation poisoning. This sequencing, robots first, then humans, is critical to understanding why Musk's plan is more serious than it might sound on the surface. He's not talking about a flag and footprints mission. He is talking about industrial prepositioning on another planet. In 2026, SpaceX planned to send 5 uncrewed ships. In the 2028 to 2029 window, the plan calls for approximately 20 ships carrying 75 tons of payload each. By the 2030 to 2031 window, that number grows to 100 ships. By 2033, potentially 500. Musk has said his long-term goal is to manufacture 1,000 Starships per year, roughly 3 ships per day, and to eventually send 1 million tons of cargo to Mars, launching 1,000 to 2,000 ships every 2 years during each transfer window. His ultimate vision is a self-sustaining city of at least 1 million people on Mars, which he believes is achievable within 30 years from now. Now, here is where the story gets complicated, and where the title of this video becomes relevant, because building a Mars city requires more than rockets and robots. It requires money. It requires political alignment. It requires that the institutions with power over space policy either support you or stay out of your way. And in 2025 and 2026, that institutional battle has become one of the most consequential and least discussed dramas in American politics. NASA, the space agency that has governed American space exploration since 1958, has for decades been working on its own vision of deep space exploration. The Space Launch System, or SLS, was their mega rocket. Orion was their crewed capsule. The Artemis program was their flagship initiative to return humans to the moon and eventually send them to Mars. Congress has poured tens of billions of dollars into these programs over 2 decades. The SLS has already cost approximately $24 billion to develop. The Orion capsule added another $20 billion. And as of 2026, they have flown exactly once, on an uncrewed test mission in 2022. That is $44 billion for one uncrewed test flight. The Trump administration's 2026 budget proposal targeted this entire legacy architecture for termination. The budget called for canceling SLS, canceling Orion, canceling the Lunar Gateway space station, and cutting NASA's overall science budget by 47%, eliminating more than 40 planned missions in a single stroke. At the same time, that budget redirected over $1 billion toward Mars-focused programs, explicitly favoring the commercial approach that SpaceX represents over the traditional government contractor model that built SLS and Orion. The message could not have been clearer. The era of government-built, government-operated deep space rockets is over. The era of SpaceX is beginning. Congress ultimately pushed back and rejected the deepest cuts. NASA received approximately $24 billion for 2026, a much better outcome than the White House proposed. But the direction of travel was unmistakable. The political wind is blowing toward SpaceX, toward commercial space, toward the Starship architecture. And the institutions that spent decades building the old model are watching their runway shrink. Here is the part that most people miss entirely when they try to understand what Musk is doing. SpaceX is not just a rocket company anymore. It is also the dominant launch provider for the United States government. NASA has become deeply dependent on SpaceX for access to space. Multiple critical missions, scientific payloads, and even crew rotations to the International Space Station all run on SpaceX vehicles. The agency that was supposed to be America's path to the stars is now, to a significant degree, a customer of Musk's company. Musk himself acknowledged this awkwardness when the NASA budget cuts were proposed. He wrote publicly that he found the science cuts troubling, but said he could not participate in NASA budget discussions because SpaceX is a major contractor to the agency, an admission that the conflict of interest between his company's financial interests and his personal views on space policy is now impossible to untangle. Now let's zoom back to the actual Mars mission and talk about the specific challenges that make this plan genuinely hard. Because this is not a story about guarantees. This is a story about one of the most difficult engineering problems in human history, being attempted on a timeline that most experts consider dangerously aggressive. Mars is not friendly. The average distance between Earth and Mars is 225 million kilometers. The journey takes between 6 and 9 months depending on the orbital geometry. During that transit, astronauts will be exposed to deep space radiation that no current shielding can fully block. Mars has no global magnetic field to protect its surface from. Solar radiation. Its atmosphere is 95% carbon dioxide and less than 1% as thick as Earth's. The surface temperature averages negative 60 degrees Celsius. Dust storms can engulf the entire planet for months at a time. And yet, Mars is also the only planet in the solar system, other than Earth, that has everything a human civilization technically needs to survive. Water ice exists just below the surface, especially in the northern volcanic plains of Arcadia Planitia, SpaceX's top candidate landing site. Carbon dioxide in the atmosphere can be converted to oxygen. The Martian day is 24 hours and 37 minutes long, closer to Earth's rhythm than any other planet. And the gravity, at 38% of Earth's, is enough to prevent the full-body deterioration that astronauts experience in zero gravity, though its long-term effects on human health are completely unknown. Sustain a colony rather than shipping everything from Earth. Robots would set up ISRU plants to extract water ice and convert carbon dioxide into oxygen and rocket propellant. This is not just a survival strategy. It is an economic necessity. Musk has estimated that 1 million tons of cargo will be needed to establish a self-sustaining Mars colony. Shipping all of that from Earth at any realistic launch cost is essentially impossible. The only way this math works is if Mars starts producing its own resources early. The Raptor 3 engine at the heart of Block 3 Starship is designed to make all of this more feasible, with greater fuel efficiency, reduced mass, and enough payload capacity increase to actually deliver the equipment needed for ISRU plants, habitat construction, and human life support in meaningful quantities. But here is what the cheerleaders often skip over. Starship has exploded multiple times during test flights. In early 2025, a test vehicle exploded just 10 minutes into its mission, causing debris to scatter over the Caribbean and triggering an FAA safety investigation that halted subsequent launches for weeks. The orbital refueling technology that the entire Mars architecture depends on has not yet been successfully demonstrated at scale. And the Optimus robots that are supposed to build a Mars base before humans arrive are still, as of early 2026, primarily in research and development mode, not yet performing productive tasks even on Earth. None of this means the plan is impossible. Musk has a track record of doing things that most aerospace engineers said could not be done on his timeline. Falcon 9 reusability was widely considered an unrealistic near-term goal before SpaceX made it routine. Starlink, the global satellite internet network, was considered economically absurd before SpaceX launched thousands of satellites and turned it into a profitable business. Dragon became the first commercial spacecraft to carry humans to the International Space Station. The pattern is consistent. Miss initial deadlines, iterate aggressively, and eventually deliver. But the timeline compression on Mars is different in kind, not just degree. The consequences of a failure on Mars are not a delayed satellite deployment or a lost mission contract. The consequences involve human lives, hundreds of billions of dollars, and potentially decades of setback for the entire field of human interplanetary exploration. And there is one more layer to this story that almost nobody is discussing. In February 2026, Musk made a surprising announcement: a delay in SpaceX's Mars timeline of 5 to 7 years in order to prioritize lunar missions first. The reason given was sequencing. The moon can serve as a testbed and stepping stone for the technologies, human adaptation strategies, and in situ resource extraction methods that Mars will require. But the timing of the announcement, in the middle of intense political and budget debates about NASA's future, raised questions about whether external pressures were also a factor. What is clear is that the Mars plan has not been abandoned. The direction is unchanged. The technology development continues. The Starships are being built at a rate SpaceX described as roughly one every 2 to 3 weeks. The Star Factory in Texas, the facility where these vehicles are manufactured, is scaling up. The political alignment between the current administration's preference for commercial space and SpaceX's capabilities remains stronger than at any point in history. What is also clear is that this is no longer just a story about one eccentric billionaire with an unusual hobby. This is a story about the restructuring of American space policy, the potential end of a 50-year era of government-led space exploration, and the beginning of something genuinely new. A private company funded by satellite internet revenue and government contracts, attempting to establish a permanent human presence on another planet. Whether Musk makes it to Mars in 2029, 2031, or 2035 is, in some ways, beside the point. The infrastructure being built right now, the rockets, the launch cadence, the political relationships, and the orbital refueling technology, the robotic construction capabilities, is real. And it is being built with a specificity and a speed that no government program in history has matched. The question is not really whether humans will go to Mars anymore. The question is who will be in charge when they get there. And right now, the answer looks increasingly like it will be one man, one company. And a vision that most people still have not taken quite seriously enough. You should probably start. Because the people who dismissed reusable rockets in 2015 were not wrong about the difficulty. They were just wrong about the person attempting it. And the people dismissing the Mars plan today are making the same mistake, measuring a historically unprecedented ambition against historically normal standards of what is possible. The plan is real. The rockets are being built. The window is approaching. And for the first time in human history, a viable path to becoming a multiplanetary species is not a government program or a science fiction novel. It is a privately funded industrial operation already underway, with a schedule, a landing site, a robot workforce, and a founder who has staked his entire legacy on its success. Whatever you think of Elon Musk, the politics, the personality, the chaos, this particular project may end up being the thing that defines the entire 21st century. Not AI, not climate change, not any war or election. The moment humanity becomes a species that lives on more than one world. And it is happening right now, whether the rest of us are watching or not.